bringing Gator Nation a different Gator great every episode.
This is Jabbar Gaffney. You're listening to the All for the Gators podcast.
Hey, I'm Earl Everett. You're not a Gator, you're Gator bait.
This is Bo Carroll.
Hey, I'm Rita Anthony.
This is Kiwan Ratliff, and you are listening to All for the Gators podcast.
This is Cedric Faison, a.k.a. C4.
This is Brandon James.
This is Jack Jackson. Go Gators.
Hi, this is your boy Jeremy Mincy, a.k.a. Mr. Mintz, and we were the All for the Gators podcast.
This is Ben Trooper. You listening to the All for the Gators podcast.
Hey, guys, this is Jarvis Moss. Go Gators.
You rocking with Lito Shepherd, and we're All for the Gators podcast, man. Top notch.
This is Chris Doring, and you're listening to the All for the Gators podcast.
And now, your Gator alumni hosts, John, Andy, and Sid.
Are you ready for today?
Very excited about this one.
I got goosebumps.
Ooh, I know you do.
Is that okay? Is that okay for a man to say in 2023 that I got goosebumps?
I understand, though. It's a really big show, and we're down a man, so our trio is back to a duo for this one, but I'm ready, and I'm very excited.
I mean, I don't even want to talk about anything else in this intro to this show. Usually we'll do a fun question or a topic. No, not today.
No.
We have
business.
All business.
All business.
A Florida Gator legend, a Chicago Bear legend, a Miami Dolphin legend will be upon us. Okay, from the Jets fan. That's the question. Should we even mention you're a Jets fan? I say no.
It's okay. I got mad respect. This man had 16 and a half sacks without even starting a game. I mean, come on. That's just bonkers.
Oh, man. We're just going to go right to him. I'm not wasting any more time.
Let's do it. Bring it in. Intro time, Johnny.
Sid, today's Gator great made such a significant impact to the University of Florida and us fans just after one single season in the swamp that he was enshrined in the UF Athletics Hall of Fame in 2000. Hailing from Birmingham, Alabama, where at John Carroll Catholic High he was all-state at linebacker and defensive end, but before landing in Gville, he headed out west to power Arizona State's D-line. He won a bunch of games in the desert and earned All-American honors in the process. Some say odd academic circumstances. We say fate brought him to UF for his last year of eligibility. And oh, did he make the most of being a Gator, leading all Florida D-linemen with 59 tackles, 41 solo, and was second on the team in sacks with 7 and tackles for loss with 12. This man was a pass-rushing beast, disrupting many a play and helping solidify Florida's number 1 ranked SEC defense against the pass in 1988. He would go on to a magnificent 15-year NFL career, being drafted in the first round by the Bears in 89, then had stops with the Dolphins back in Florida, and then the Raiders, rounding out his NFL career with a Super Bowl. Gator Nation, I give you 1988 first-team All-SEC, first-team All-American, voted as one of the best to ever do it in the orange and blue for the first 100 years of Florida football in 2006, UF Hall of Famer and NFL All-Pro, big number 93, Raymond Lester Armstrong III. You know him as Trace Armstrong.
Oh, you got the Raymond Lester in there, John. That's great.
He's a fan of that government name.
Yeah.
Hey, Trace, so cool to have you on with us, man. Like I said, we grew up in South Florida, and I'm a Dolphins fan. Sid, not so much, but I mean, I was there cheering for you and Zach and JT. I think Madison and Surtain were on the team too. That amazing defense.
Oh, yeah.
In Joe Robbie or whatever they called it at that time. I was there in the stands cheering you on, man.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, those were great times. I still keep in touch with a lot of those guys. You know, we were really lucky. We had a great crew. Like, we had a bunch of guys that liked each other, really liked to play the game, liked to practice. You had to do that if you played for Jimmy Johnson. You had to like to practice. So, it was really a treat to go into work. You know, you would literally every day you would laugh as hard as you could possibly laugh. You would work hard. You'd have conversations where you're making fun of your buddy's body parts, what he wore into work that day, and his girlfriend, all in the same conversation, and it was great. So, those are really good days.
That's what you're looking for in a work environment. I like the sound of that. But before you were doing things in the NFL, let's take it back to Alabama. You went to high school in Alabama. Was it a Tiger house, a Tide house? And what was it like growing up in Alabama then in the 80s?
Oh, so, it was my family moved down from actually Northern Virginia, when I was 6 or 7. So it was great. I grew up, the neighborhood I lived in, I grew up in a town called Hoover. Sports were king, and me and all my buddies, you went from football to basketball to baseball, and
sure.
it was really a good way to grow up. I grew up in a family business. My dad owned a series of convenience stores. So, for me on the weekends, I was working in the store and I would listen to Alabama on the radio, to the Alabama football games. And, I was taken with the game from the time I was, 7 years old. So, I really don't think of my life in years. I didn't, certainly, until I got done playing. I thought of them in terms of seasons, like what season was that? So it was a good place to grow up.
In high school there at John Carroll, you were all-state, like I said. You were ranked by your newspaper as one of the top dozen football players in the state. So my question, when a player's getting recruited, right, they have preferences for what school they want to go to, right? Like a prestigious program or playing time or location. So what was it for you that got you out to the desert there in Tempe? I mean, you must have had a lot of options, right?
Good question.
Well, not really. I mean, I was an interesting player. I grew really late in high school, so I was tall and skinny. I was 6'4" and probably at that time like 200 pounds. And I really didn't start growing until, really my junior year of high school. So a lot of people didn't know where I would play. I played linebacker in high school, and some people thought I was a tight end. Some people thought I was going to be a defensive lineman. And I went up to Arizona State because at 18, that was like the biggest adventure I could find. I didn't want to do the conventional thing. I went out there on a visit. There was a coach who was recruiting me to go to Georgia that got a job at Arizona State, a guy named Chip Wisdom, during the recruiting process. And I went out there, and Tempe, Arizona in 1984 was a pretty good place to be. And they were good. They had a bunch of good players on that team, bunch of NFL players, Randall McDaniel, Eric Allen. I think, a dozen of the guys off that, well, really more than that, probably 17 guys off that Rose Bowl team ended up playing in the league. Wow. So I went out there knowing we would be good. And, little did I know my time at linebacker was about, 35 seconds from the time they break the first practice, the stretch down. Okay, linebackers over here. I'm running to the linebackers, and they're like, "Oh no, Trace, we're going to try you at the D-line." So that was my first encounter with adversity in football. Not my first, but certainly a big one.
So you redshirt in '84, and like you mentioned, some big time names you're with over there. What did a young Trace Armstrong learn from those guys?
I was really lucky. I really was. Like the right person in my life, the right people always showed up to help me. So I had a great D-line coach named Rex Norris, who actually ended up going to the NFL and then coaching me again here at Florida. Rex made a huge impression on me as a young player. And when I got moved to defensive line, like nobody thought I was going to be a player. At that time, I was, 6'4", 230 maybe. And, I had not done a lot of playing with my hand on the ground growing up. So, I was getting pushed around.
Do you want to explain what that means to Sid? He might not understand.
Growing up with your hand on the ground?
Yeah, he's a Jets fan. He might not understand.
Oh,
okay.
Low blow.
Come on. I love watching the Jets defense this year. I think.
Thank you.
I'm optimistic about the Jets.
Oh, I wish I could be more optimistic about the quarterback, but this is a Gator show. I won't go there.
I know. Yeah. So playing with your hand on the ground is being a lineman. So, I was a linebacker in high school and used to kind of run in to the ball. And then, you put your hand on the ground, and they put me in a position nobody really plays anymore. I was a flex tackle. So it was Randy White played it for the Cowboys. It's where you're a defensive tackle, but you line up 1.5 yards off the ball. And I had just the absolute worst body type for that position. Normally you would have wanted somebody like squatty, really strong. I wasn't very strong. And you didn't want somebody that was like long-legged and skinny. So I learned the hard way how to play the defensive line there. But we had a lot of great players. I was lucky to play. Darryl Rogers was the head coach. He left after my first year. John Cooper came in, with a great all-star staff. A guy named Larry Marmee was our defensive coordinator. Larry was the head coach at Arizona State later and coached a long time in college and the NFL. Bill Young came in. He was my defensive line coach. Bill was a coordinator at places like Oklahoma and USC and Ohio State. So I was really, really lucky in that, when I was at those formative years, I had really good people around me.
Well, that second year as a sophomore, you talk about Coach Cooper coming in. You guys get a great deal of success. Go 10-1, finish 4 after beating Michigan in the Rose Bowl.
Right.
This is a unique experience for a Gator. We haven't talked to anybody who's been to a Rose Bowl before, especially back then, the granddaddy of them all. You only got to do that if you were in the old Pac-10 and Big Ten champ. So, what can you share with our Gator listeners about the Rose Bowl experience, since that is definitely unfamiliar territory for us?
It was awesome. The kids today are so much more worldly than, my generation. So just the idea of going to a bowl game was like, like taking a trip around the world for somebody, for kids like us. Going to Disneyland was this huge deal, right? I mean, a huge deal. So it was larger than life. It really was. And you walk out into that stadium. It was the biggest crowd that I'd ever been in front of, and they turn the lights on and the crowd goes nuts. It was a unbelievable experience for a young kid. Again, I feel immensely fortunate, and it's funny with that team. We really didn't know how good we were, and as I talked to like Coach Cooper and some of our other teammates, like we look back and we lost a game that year we probably shouldn't have. But, you look at that team, you had guys like Dan Saliamua as a defensive tackle, played for the Chiefs, the Lions and the Chiefs. Skip McClendon, the defensive end, had about 8 years in the league. I mentioned Randall McDaniel. We had Aaron Cox, who was a first-round draft pick. The list goes on and on. Todd Kalis, who played 8 or 9 years in the NFL for the Steelers and the Vikings. Yeah. We just had David Fulcher, who was a great player for the Bengals. We had NFL players literally all over the field. And we just, at that time, we just didn't know that, we could be that good.
Well, your junior season, you break out as a starter, 51 tackles, 10 for loss, and you lead the team with 7 sacks. Your All-American honorable mention that year. To what do you attribute that success that year? Just the playing time? Just a matter of getting on the field? Or
Yeah, I think, I played, they moved me to end, which was a big deal for me because it was just, my body was more suited to playing outside. And, we had some seniors that graduated and I split time with another guy playing that flex tackle position the year before. So, playing in the right position was one thing. There was a great former NFL defensive lineman his name was Earl Edwards. And Earl, I think played in the league about 13 years. I got a chance to work with Earl just as, a guy that was there in town. And he taught me about pass rush and, taught me how to think about stance and takeoff and those things. And, he made a big impact on me, that year. And, I finally felt like at that time, you could play games where people may throw the ball 12 or 15 times, not like today. And I started to learn, okay, you can really impact the game as a defensive lineman, not just by making tackles, but getting sacks.
That's right.
And getting tackles for losses. So kind of the light bulb went on for me a little bit that year. That was like the first inkling that I had. Like I had no idea that I was going to be a great player in college. At that point I was kind of a try-hard guy. I was such a late bloomer physically. And the game was just starting to come to me then.
Came to you at the right time. You were sort of like a free agent for the college days back then.
Yeah.
You must have had like your pick of the litter. How did you ultimately land in Gainesville to play for Galen Hall and become a Gator legend?
So it's crazy. I called, Rex Norris had coached me, and Rex was, again, my coach my freshman year at UF, and he made a big impression on me. And so he was coaching at the league at that time, and the NCAA gave me a choice. I could, declare myself eligible for the draft, which then you had to have permission. It's not like it is now. You couldn't leave early if you had eligibility left. So they allowed me to go in the draft, or I could transfer to any other Division I school and be eligible right away. So literally, I called Coach Norris. He's with the Lions, and they said, "Coach, this has happened. What do I do?" He said, "Well, let me check with our personnel guys." And he got back to me, and he said, "They tell me you're going to be a third-round pick. You should stay in school." And, I never thought, when he told me I was going to be a third-round pick, I was, elated because I didn't see myself that way. I was hoping, he was going to say, "Hey, you definitely get a free agent tryout, if you went in the draft." I would have absolutely been happy with that. So that was news to me. And then, I got to get recruited just like another student. And so I went to Georgia. I talked to Joe Paterno on the phone, which was a real treat. And I was kind of a 1-year free agent.
So how did that happen? What was the circumstance that put you in that situation?
So when I went to Arizona State, I went to a small Catholic school in Birmingham, and they just had a different way of calculating grade point average. And so when I went to Arizona State, they looked at my grades and said, "Okay, his grades are good." And I took calculus, chemistry, all that stuff in high school. It was a Catholic school. You didn't really have a choice. They looked at my course load and they said, "Okay, he's fine." So they never thoroughly vetted my transcript. And so that was the issue. And I was on the practice field my freshman year at Arizona State. And, the athletic director walked out on the field and he said, "We have a problem. And the NCAA's ruled you ineligible. We didn't properly vet your transcript, your high school transcript at the time." And he said, "Oh, just don't worry about it. This is all going to get cleared up." Well, it didn't. So I got ruled ineligible my freshman year. My parents hired a lawyer, threatened to sue the NCAA. So after my freshman year, they reinstate me with 3 years of eligibility with the option to appeal for the fourth.
Huh.
And so I thought, the way I looked at it as a young guy, I didn't want my parents to, push this any further. I was okay with that. And I figured, this is all just one big misunderstanding. And, when the time comes for the appeal, they'll grant the appeal. And so I played 3 years at Arizona State. I have a great time there. Love my teammates, love going to school there, love playing there. And we're getting towards the end of my junior year, and the athletic director had changed, and I just started getting really nervous about this appeal. And I'm looking at it like a kid would. I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, I could be out eligibility, and next month after the bowl game, I'm going to have to find some place to live or get a job." And they kept telling me at Arizona State, "Oh, don't worry about it. This is just going to be a procedural thing." And I just kept asking more questions. I was like, "Well, so does anybody from here go?" And they're like, no, that's not how it works. And I said, "So who's going to advocate for me?" And they said, "Well, we submit a brief and they'll read it and make a decision." And I just asked, I said, "Well, can I go?" And they're like, "Yeah, but that's not really how it works." I said, "But can I go?" They said, "Yeah." So I hopped in my Monte Carlo one day after practice, and I drove to Shawnee Mission, Kansas. I drank Mountain Dews and took no-dos and got there and changed in the parking lot and went in with my blue blazer on. And they listened to my appeal. It was clear they didn't even read anything before I got there. And they said, "Well, we'll give you a decision in 2 weeks." And I said, "I can't wait 2 weeks. 2 weeks, it's going to be January, and I need to know where am I going to be in school? Am I not?" And they told me, they said, "Well, we denied your appeal. You can transfer right away, be eligible, or you can go in the draft." And so I just had a couple of weeks to kind of get my act together and figure out what I was going to do with the next chapter of my life. And so I ended up at Florida, and I wanted to come back to the South. I wanted to be closer to my family and have them have a chance to see me play some games in college. And it was a great decision. Florida was great to me. We had a great academic advisor, Tom Williams, and I lost a bunch of credits because I transferred, and Tom put together a plan for me to graduate. The football team, Galen, they all treated me great. It was when you're in a Pac-10 at that time, Pac-10 athlete, athletes are kind of tolerated. And here you got to really feel like what it meant to be a part of something big. The fan support was something like you just didn't experience, in the Pac-10. The support of the school, we had great people, equipment guys, Uncle Bud Fernandez, Chris Patrick, the trainer, just a real collection of all-star people that, welcomed me with open arms and treated me like I'd been there my whole career.
It's funny. We just had Jabbar Gaffney on to celebrate his UF Hall of Fame induction. And when we were talking to him, I told him, pound for pound, he only played 2 years. And his stats were amazing.
Yeah.
So just talking about, what other players in Gator history had such a strong effect in a short amount of time. And I think we found it. I mean,
way to make the most of that moment.
It only took you 1 year to become a Gator legend.
Yeah.
And you must have fell in love with Gainesville too, right? Because you still live there.
Yeah, I still live here. Yeah. This is a good place for us. I mean, I ended up in Gainesville. I was playing for the Bears, and, I just decided, we had a terrible weight room. This is back in the old days. And it was a really cold winter. And I said, I can't do this anymore. Our weight room was probably about 1,200 square feet. I'm not kidding you, about 1,200 square feet.
Wow.
And, the weather was terrible, no indoor facility. And I said, well, we're going to move somewhere in the off season. My wife said, we're not going to move. She went to UF too. She said, we're not going to move somewhere so you can work out. So you're going to have to come up with another plan. So, we ended up going to grad school in the off season. And so that's what we did. We came back here, and, this place, just again, they welcomed me back. And, when they gave me that 1 year scholarship, they didn't know it was going to be like a lifetime gym membership too. And, so I was there working out like with the team every day and then going to class. It was great. It was a great experience.
Did Neil come with you when you guys were on the Bears to work out in Gainesville?
Well, so Neil wasn't living here then.
Okay.
He didn't move back to Gainesville until after he was done playing.
Okay.
Talking about your move east then coming out from the desert, came out hot out of the gate, start 5-0. Looks like you're going to do some good things. You're ranked. And then, Hall of Famer Emmitt Smith goes down with a big injury against Memphis State, misses about a month or so, could definitely derail a season. And
we don't score a touchdown. We don't score one touchdown that whole month that Emmitt is out.
No wonder you commiserate with my Jets defense. It's just like that, huh? Great defense, no offense. So,
I think that's actually true. I mean, I really think we did not score a touchdown the whole month Emmitt was gone.
Wow.
So how can you quantify how one player, even if that one player is like elite of elite, Hall of Famer Emmitt Smith, but how does missing Emmitt in the heart of the season like that change the tone of the season, how you go from week to week with your game plan and whatnot?
Oh, yeah. It's interesting. I played with I played against Troy Aikman. I played against a lot of great players in the Pac-10. But I tell you, I never saw anybody like Emmitt. He was like a wow. Where you see, you would see guys, they're great and they're very good players. But, with Emmitt, he was, really special. And you knew it when you saw it. I mean, that's what great looks like. His strength, his vision, his abilities to make cuts and things. And he just did things that other people couldn't do at that time. But, we lost him. And it was interesting, when I got here in 88, Florida was on the kind of the tail ends of, the NCAA sanctions from 1984.
Right.
And I think that's where it showed up, as we had some talented players, but we weren't a super talented team. And, we lost our best player on offense, and, we just didn't have many answers.
Well, your offensive troubles there, it didn't get in the way of your success. You had that monster season, like I said, leading the D-Linemen tackles, 7 sacks, tons of tackles for losses. Did you realize at the time how special of a season you were having there in Gainesville?
Well, I tell you what I realized, I had Rondy Weston and Jeff Roth. Those were my 2 D-Linemen. Both those guys were all SEC. They were great players. The other guy in our kind of hybrid, 4 down was Huey Richardson.
Oh, yeah.
And then we had, a young guy, Brad Culpepper, Brad at that time was kind of like a young guy that I took under my wing. We had Tony McCoy. You could see like we had some really good young players, and I knew like our defensive line, I knew we were legit. I really felt like we might have been the best one in the country. At that time. So, like I didn't think what I was doing was special, but I knew that I was a part of something special, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Spoken like a true team leader, of course. So talking, this is the pre-Spurrier era here, before the SEC was the top, and some school from the SEC, hopefully Gators, were usually competing for championships. So getting to compete at the highest level in the Pac-10 and then coming to do it in the SEC, how, you spoke a little bit about how Emmett was different, but how can you speak to the caliber of what you were playing on a week-to-week basis and, the quality of the Pac-10 back then compared to the SEC? What were some of the differences?
Well, that's a great question, Sid. I would say, honestly, I think the quality of the players in the Pac-10 at that time were higher. I think the skill and the types of offenses you played against were much more sophisticated from a passing standpoint. And I felt like, the SEC had a bunch of like really big, strong, physical offensive linemen, who were, much better probably run blockers than you might have found in the Pac-10. But the Pac-10 overall, at that time, I thought was a better league. Washington was really prominent at that time. Don James
won a
was the head
championship
coach.
In that area.
Yeah, that's right. USC, UCLA. We had a minute in there. There were some great Washington State teams that put a bunch of guys in the league. I just really think like at that time I wouldn't venture to guess numbers, but now about half the league is from the SEC. At that time, that was one of the things the Pac-10 hung their hat on, was they had more players in the NFL than any other conference. So I'd say at that time, the Pac-10 was probably ahead of the SEC.
Yeah, hard to argue with that.
You mentioned Brad Culpepper earlier. You played alongside some Gator greats on D there. The hitman Louis Oliver. You mentioned Huey Richardson.
Sweet Lou.
Culpepper was just getting started, right, in that season. Which guys were you close to? And did you recognize at the time that Brad was going to be special?
Oh, yeah. So, like, kind of my crew would have been Brad, some of the younger guys, Kirk Kirkpatrick, who's a great player, tight end, Jeff Roth. Rondy and I were close, but, we didn't, I think I had a girlfriend. I think he probably had 5 or 6 or something like that. But we didn't do a lot together. Lewis was my next door neighbor. So, we had a good group. We enjoyed being around each other, and it was a lot of fun.
Where were the places to hang out back in 1988? We were there between 90, 96, 95, and 2000.
Yeah,
so
you got like a decade jump on us.
Yeah. So where were you hanging out?
Oh, I guess like CJ's, Purple Porpoise. That was one thing. The nightlife in Gainesville didn't compare to Tempe, Arizona at that time.
Interesting.
But, it did not.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of like big house parties were a big thing then, apartment parties, that kind of stuff. But there were a couple of spots in town. Purple Porpoise is where the new social is.
Right.
CJ's was a hot spot.
Calico Jacks,
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Yep.
So you mentioned earlier how you feel like your defensive line, was held up as one of the great Gator defensive lines. Do you ever feel like, if you could have played at another time with one of the better offenses, maybe in the Spurrier era, where you could have had an opportunity to be showcased on a bigger stage? So clearly you're a Hall of Famer. You as an individual stood out, but do you think that group that you spoke of kind of gets lost in the mix because you didn't have better team success at the time?
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. And look, it's the game belongs to the players on the field, and so the longer you get away from the field, it's just natural, right? I thought they had some great defensive lines. Later they had Ellis Johnson, obviously a great Kevin Carter, who I got a ton of respect for. There were other really good D lines that came along after us, but I'd say our group was as good as any.
Your Gators that year in 1988 go 7-5 under Coach Hall.
Yeah,
win the All-American Bowl over Illinois, but you were on the sideline. You had just had, I think, knee surgery right after the regular season.
It was my second one during the year.
Yeah. Wow. Was that bittersweet, or were you ready for the next level at that point?
Oh, I was ready. I mean, I couldn't play, so I tear some cartilage in my knee at the Vanderbilt game. And we were getting ready to play Auburn, and they had a really good defensive lineman, a guy named Trace Armstrong, who at that time was kind of all-world. And I wanted to show people that, I was better than him. And so I got it in my head. I asked Dr. Pete Indelicato, Pete fixed my knee, and I said, can you play in a week? And he said, yeah, but you really shouldn't. And I got it in my head that I was going to play, and I did. And played pretty well against Auburn, but after the game, my knee was full of fluid, and I knew I had hurt it again. So I kind of get through the rest of the year. I would get my knee drained on, Monday after the game, and then get it drained again.
Wow.
On Thursday, and so by the end of the year, you do that, 4 or 5 weeks in a row. It was just time for me to get it fixed again. So didn't play in that game and got my knee scoped. But no, all in all, it was a great experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Are there any special plays you made in Gainesville or moments in a game that stick with you to this day when you think back of your Gator career?
I remember one moment. I've got a picture of Jeff and Rodney and I after the LSU game, and LSU came in here and they were highly ranked, and they had a great quarterback named Tommy Hodson, and Tommy hadn't been sacked in 6 games or something like that, and over so many attempts, and I think we sacked him 5 times in the first half. Brent Musburger called that game with Pat Hayden, and I had a big day that day, and so that was the first day nationally that I probably got recognized.
Nice.
And it was just fun. Jeff played great, made a bunch of plays. Ronnie played great, made a bunch of plays. So it was just a great moment there after the game with those two guys.
Clearly, you did get recognized. After the season, you get selected number 12 in the first round by the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
You're joining a defense that still has members of that legendary 1985 Bears D. Got Mongo, Fridge, Richard Dent.
Yeah.
Singletary lining up behind you. I mean, this is NFL royalty. What's it like being a rookie with these guys to learn from and hanging out in the locker room?
Intimidating, to say the least. Intimidating. And that's not just great players. They are some of the great characters in the history of the NFL. My buddy Steve McMichael, who's battling ALS. Steve's going in the Hall of Fame. Dan was a Hall of Fame or is a Hall of Famer. Richard Dent went in the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
So when you play with guys like that, you walk in the room and you know it. And you see them and they look different and they act different. I was a long-term holdout. Then I missed 30 days of training camp, which is basically all of training camp. So all those guys were mad at me. And, they didn't realize the Bears never offered me a contract until the day of training camp. They don't care about that. They were just mad that I missed training camp. So, those guys, they didn't talk to me till really about the first game. So I got there for the last preseason game. Signed my contract. We're playing the San Diego Chargers. So I go in and get yelled at by Coach Ditka about the whole holdout thing. Sign my contract. And he said, "Are you in shape?" And I said, "Yeah, Coach." And I started to say, I've been running twice a day, blah, blah, blah. And he said, "Good, because you're going to play tonight, and you're going to play a lot." So literally, I walk in off the street, hadn't played football since my last game at Florida, and I played every snap in the fourth preseason game.
That's got to be a record.
Yeah, seriously.
Oh, my God.
That doesn't happen anymore.
I can remember. No, it doesn't. I can remember pulling into the facility on Monday, and I was so sore that I had to lift my legs out of the car. That's how sore I was. And my neck was so sore. I had a helmet on, and then you go right into it. And we played Cincinnati the first week, and I still wasn't over it. I'd get my stance and everything.
Let me ask you about that, Trace, because I heard a story about that first game of yours against Cincinnati and a guy named Anthony Munoz. Can you tell us how that
went? Yeah, I didn't make any plays, and Anthony would talk to you during the play. He would just say, "Oh gosh, you play really hard," and oh God. I hate. He was so nice, and it just made me hate him more.
Does that make it worse?
After the game, oh yeah, it was totally worse. After the game, he came over and hugged me and said, "Oh, you're going to be great. You just keep playing hard."
Oh, that's great.
I made no plays.
Hey, you played hard. You were voted to the NFL All-Rookie team, right?
Not bad.
Yeah,
not so shabby.
No, that's good. I got a chance to play a fair amount that year, and I dislocated my ankle in Tampa, and it was a bad injury, and that one haunted me for a good chunk of my career because I got it fixed. They didn't really do a great job of repairing it the first time, and I didn't really get it fixed correctly until my 6th year.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was if I had it to do over again, I'd do that one over again.
Well, in addition to being an all-rookie team, your teammates voted you the winner of the Brian Piccolo Award for courage, loyalty, teamwork, dedication, and sense of humor. That's pretty significant. We're talking about freaking Brian's song here. What can you tell us about that?
Oh, they're a neat family. They really are. So, the type of cancer that Brian died of, it was testicular cancer, but at the time it had about a 5% survival rate. And so, the family worked diligently for decades to fund cancer research. And, when I won the award, the survival rate for that form of cancer was 95%.
Wow.
And you just think about what a family,
it's amazing, just a couple decades.
Yeah. Exactly. What an impact they were able to make. And so I was really humbled and honored, and just to be recognized by my teammates felt great. We had a lot of fun. We used to have a D-Line party night on Thursday night, and I can just tell you, with that cast of characters, a felony was committed every Thursday night, without fail.
Well, a lot of them are Hall of Famers, legends, and you're right there with them. You're voted one of the 100 greatest Chicago Bears of all time, right?
Wow.
I heard something about that. Yeah, it's quite an honor.
That's amazing.
A lot of great players. Yeah, a lot of great players.
That's not like doing it for the Carolina Panthers. We're talking about the Bears. They started from day one. You make a list on an accomplishment of that franchise. That means something.
That's right.
Oh yeah, no, it was great. Like I said, I was really lucky, and I had Mike Ditka, and Mike was, Coach was, the best night before a game speaker I've ever been around. Tough as nails, had just a great way of impacting guys' mindsets. So Coach Ditka would have been a great field general in World War II. He would have put George Patton to shame, maybe, but. Really for a young guy in a city like that too, where sports really matters. I know, Sid, you guys think it does in New York, but I'm just telling you, it means more in Chicago.
Yeah, you were there in the Jordan years. That's a special time. Nothing but respect.
Oh yeah, no, it was getting to see those guys play. It was really phenomenal. So yeah, really cool experience. And then, I got traded to the Dolphins in whatever year that was, I guess 95. Don Shula was the coach then. He traded for me.
Right.
He was the chairman of the competition committee. I was the president of the union at the time, the player NFLPA, and so I was the players designee on the competition committee, and that's how I got to meet Coach Shula. And I really believe that's how I became a Dolphin. I wouldn't say Don and Coach Shula and I were friends, but I think he, got a chance to be around me and develop some respect for me. And that honestly was, like I said, I was really fortunate to come to Florida. Felt really fortunate to go to Miami when I did.
Well, you had some timing with these coaches. I mean, listen to the names you dropped. We got championship coach with starting right away in Chicago with Ditka. Then you go to Don Shula, the winningest coach of all time, couple Super Bowl rings. Then you bring in Jimmy Johnson, won some college championships and pro championships. And you finish it with John Gruden, who's won a Super Bowl. I mean, as a guy who is a Jets fan, like we've had one good coach in the last 30 years. Like you've had some really good luck navigating there.
It's true. I told you I was really lucky. I've had the right people show up at the right time. Coach Shula was unbelievable. He was at the end of his career, but kind of like you see when you see great players at the end. They're not as good as they were, but you can still see it, and that's what you could see in Coach Shula was, his. How do you last that long? How do you win that many games? And one of my favorite stories about Coach is, you travel for these preseason games, and they'll have a bunch of guys in the league are Catholic, believe it or not. A bunch of coaches are, and so you go in for mass on Sunday before the game, and I walk in and there's Coach Shula, and he's dressed as an altar boy. Huh. And so this is Coach Shula, like he's legendary. So you see him in this altar boy gown,
right?
And I almost started to laugh because I kind of thought, well, it was funnier, like he was playing a joke. And then I just didn't quite know how to take it. And then Coach, he worked as an altar boy, and he read one of the readings. He helped with communion. And it really kind of clicked for me. I thought, how great is this guy? He's Don Shula, winningest coach in NFL history. He's showing to people that his faith's important to him, and he's humble enough to serve. And it made such an impression on me. It said, how does a guy, he raises a great family. He's able to maintain balance and an even keel in the NFL for a long time. And I think that was part of his secret, but it made a huge impression on me.
Wow, that's a great story. After the 6 years in Chicago and Shula trades for you and you spend your next 6 in Miami, you take your career to the next level, so to speak. You get 3 more of your 5 seasons with double-digit sacks. You topped it off with leading the AFC with 16.5 in I think it was 2000. Mm-hmm. You voted NFL All-Pro. You make the Pro Bowl that season. What were those years like with Zach and JT and that stellar D? And I think Marino wasn't having his greatest years there at the end of his career, right? But your defense was really carrying you guys.
Yeah, we had really good players on defense, and I think Dan was still capable. We just didn't give Dan a lot of help. We just didn't have a ton of, big time weapons on offense. No disrespect to any of my teammates, but we just didn't have many game breakers for Dan to play off of. But we had a great crew. Tim Bowens, great defensive tackle. Daryl Gardner.
Big boys.
It's large mammals.
Oh, yeah.
Jason Taylor, Zach, and we had a good crew. And like I said, but it was guys that we liked each other. We liked to play. And I think, when we went out to the Pro Bowl that year, I think, 8 guys from that defense were in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
So that was a great experience.
I'm looking at your numbers, and I don't understand how that was your first Pro Bowl year. I don't get it.
Well, I think like when I came in the league, the years when I had good years, in the Pro Bowl is different now. The guys that play in the Super Bowl don't go, and there are a lot more players that go, and so then a trip to Hawaii was a big deal for guys that were making, less than $1 million. To be able to take your family to Hawaii was a big deal. And, the average starter at that time was making about 400,000. So guys went. So, Bruce Smith went to every Pro Bowl. I think he might have missed one due to injury. Richard Dent went to every Pro Bowl that he got elected to. So guys went. So I was an alternate a couple times, and you had to break through. If you're in the NFC, you're talking about guys like Reggie White and Clyde Simmons, and there's some big time players. Sure. So that was a tough crew to break into.
We've gone through a number of remarkable teammates that you've had. I'm just listening. You could field like an all-time all-Madden team here. I mean, you're starting with a Hall of Famer with Randall McDaniel, I think went to 12 Pro Bowls. You got Emmett, one of the greatest running backs of all time. Dan Marino, although you played with him at the end. I mean, as a Jet fan, I could tell you, Dan Marino, anywhere on the field, one play away from a score.
Darn right.
You like friend of the show, Terry Jackson, told us stories with Jerry Rice. You even finished with Jerry Rice at the end. And then the defense, you got Hall of Famers with, Zach Thomas, Jason Taylor. Like, it is ridiculous. Your teammates, your circle, it's like you just surround yourself with greatness, and you wrap it all up in the Super Bowl. So it's kind of amazing to bookend that, everything from the Rose Bowl and then finishing it in the Super Bowl in Oakland. How does the Super Bowl compare to the Rose Bowl or other big games?
It was surreal. We were a team. I went to Oakland, so had never been a free agent, so I was 35 years old, and I'd had Dave Wannstedt. Dave was a coach in Chicago. Dave traded me to Miami, and I like Dave. I respect Dave, but I had been through it with Dave. I knew what was going to happen, and I knew we'd be good for a year or so, and then we would start the inevitable decline. I had some buddies that played for the Raiders. We had lost to them in the playoffs, I think the year before. And when I went to the Pro Bowl, John Gruden and the Raiders staff were my coaching staff. Oh. And so they showed up at my house at midnight of free agency. And, so you had Tim Brown, who was a buddy of mine from the Union, Rich Gannon, who was a friend of mine. They just had some guys on that team that I liked and respected, and I knew they were going to win.
Another Hall of Famer, Tim Brown.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can keep going. Rod Woodson, Charles Woodson.
Yeah. Heisman winners now, too. You're just showing off. It's okay.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the thing. It's what you learn is when I go to these college games, I always look for what I call Sunday bodies, like who has the most Sunday bodies. And, when you play with guys like that, what great looks like. So I was really, again, I keep saying it, I was really fortunate in that regard. And, what was great too is you get to take a little piece from all of them. Rod Woodson, meticulous note taker, right? Meticulous. In the way he took care of himself physically. Zach Thomas was Zach's preparation and passion for the game. Everybody, Jason Taylor, with just the incredible drive and the desire to be a star, and wanting to make every play. So you learn from all these guys, and you hope you have a good impact on them too along the way. That's the thing that you miss in the work world is just that single purpose, right? And when you get on really good teams with a good culture. There's nothing better.
You mentioned you were president of the Players Union, the NFLPA. How long were you in that position, and what would you say you're most proud of that you accomplished in that position?
Boy, gosh, so I got elected as the player rep when I was with the Bears my rookie year, and I showed up to Gene Upshaw was our executive director, and
another Hall of Famer.
Like any, exactly. Gene ended up becoming a dear friend. But I was a young kid, like any, awesome 23-year-old is. I showed up with a legal pad with about 5 pages of notes, and I thought I was going to get Gene fired at the meeting. And so you can imagine how that guy was. But by the end of the meeting, I got elected as our team representative, and I started to believe in what Gene was trying to do and what we were trying to do. So, we won free agency. We didn't get it in arbitration like baseball did. We had to go to court and win it. We did that in 1993. We had big wins in collective bargaining in 93 and 95 and 98, and made improvements in player safety. When we sued the owners in White v. NFL, the owners had to disclose their financials, and I think the Bears team payroll at that time was $13 million. And when you went in for a contract negotiation at that time, there was no free agency, so all you're doing was really begging, and your only leverage was to not play, right? And so that meant you weren't getting paid. And so, the Bears Super Bowl year, they had two starters hold out and literally missed the whole season in a contract dispute. So owners held all the cards. So, I was really proud of the fact that, we were able to set the foundation for modern football. The owners all thought free agency would ruin football. We said it's going to make football a year-round sport. We were right. Back in those days, you got done with the season, you really didn't read about football. There was a little bit around the draft, a little bit around the one mini camp that everybody had, and then not much until the season started. Even the preseason games were not heavily covered. They're all in local TV, and so free agency changed that, and it really started to make football a year-round sport. So really proud of what me and guys like Tim Brown and Steve Jordan and Mike Ken, so many others were able to accomplish, because it was a bunch of guys that laid their career on the line. If you wanted to not be seen in good graces by NFL ownership, the best way to do that was to be a player rep and work with the union. So really proud of those days. And I couldn't tell you, I loved playing. I loved being an advocate for players. I absolutely loved it. So I couldn't pick which, I couldn't separate the two. I couldn't pick one over the other. I really enjoyed them both.
Something else you probably enjoyed in 2000, your induction to the UF Athletics Hall of Fame. What does that mean to you today?
I tell you, it means a lot. And it really meant a lot at the moment because I had this kind of fractured college experience, right? There was kind of like this asterisk by my name. I was a kid from Alabama who went to Arizona, who came to Florida, and everybody's like, what? And, why didn't you go to Alabama? Why didn't you go to Auburn? And, like I said, when I got here in 1988, Florida really wrapped their arms around me and, made me feel like I was really a part of them. And that meant a lot to me. So, I really, all along the way, went out of my way to champion UF and not only what they did for me, but just how they did it for everybody. So, getting inducted really, really meant a lot to me because it just showed, when you have a kind of a split background like I did, you wonder, did you really make an impact anywhere? So to get recognized, by UF was really special.
I'll say this: you had 169 total tackles in college. If all those were at UF, you would be number 4 on the all-time list.
Wow! Wow!
4, not so shabby, my friend.
Yeah, it's. I got to play a lot. That was a secret over the years.
Well, you have to be able to play well to be able to play a lot. So it's chicken or egg, right?
Again, I keep saying I've been lucky, but I came in when I was a young player at Arizona State. They had me play this flex tackle. The older guys didn't want to play it, and I was just a guy that would go in there and try hard and play hard. And at most places, they probably would have had 2 or 3 people in front of me, but just as it turned out, at that one position, they were thin, so I got to play. And, that did so much for me. And just literally, it gave me so much longer to figure the game out. So by the time I was a senior, I was just starting to figure out, okay, this is really how you're supposed to do it.
Looking back at your amazing career, everything from the Sugar Bowl to the Super Bowl and all in between, Rose Bowl to the Super Bowl, I should say. What are you most proud of from your accomplishments, either college or pro?
Oh, wow. Holy moly. Most proud of. I'm going to need a second to think about that. I've never really thought about it in those terms. I'll tell you what I miss the most. I miss the locker room. I miss the teammates. I miss the laughs. I miss the relationships. I miss the big wins. You also miss the big losses. I really, those tough losses that really made you dig deep and, sitting up till 3:00 in the morning, hoping that the result's going to change, watching Sports Center for the 18th time, hoping that you make that play that you didn't make. But it makes you dig really deep. So I miss all those things the most. The thing I'm the most proud of is I do think like I was able to have an impact on the people around me. My buddy Zach Thomas and my buddy Jason Taylor mentioned me in their Hall of Fame speech. That meant the world to me because, it just let you know, like, all right, it wasn't all just about me, and I was able to have a positive impact on the guys around me. I'd say that's the thing I feel the best about.
Great answer.
It is a great answer. 106 sacks in your career, and I think that was 16th most all time.
Exclusive triple digits.
Oh man, they're passing me like crazy now.
I'm saying then, when you retired.
That's a select club, triple digits. That's a big deal.
Yeah, they I got like if we had video, I could show it to you. I got like a 4-inch little crystal statue that they gave me for getting to 100 sacks. The NFL started this 100 sack club, and so Bruce Smith is kind of the head of the club, right? And so they have a thing at the Super Bowl, and they're giving us these little awards, and there are a bunch of great players there, and it was fun. And talk pass rush and relive it, and everybody was a fan of everybody else. And Bruce had the light of the night, though. He goes, "You have to remember that this is your club, and I want you guys to kind of take it wherever it is you want to take it." And he said, "You have to also know that I'm in a different club, because Bruce is in the 200 club."
Oh,
I thought that was great.
Yeah.
Wow,
absolutely. Well, today you're running a sports agency firm, right? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so it's Athletes First, and I've got partners. We represent about 300 NFL players.
Wow.
And so we negotiate their contracts. We help them with, literally everything. And then we also represent, quite a few NFL head coaches, general managers, and NCAA head football coaches.
Oh, very cool. Still connected to the game, still helping the players out.
Yeah, that's great.
As they say, we're all robbing the same train, John.
All right, Trace. Well, we usually close with a bit, and we're going to do a Mount Rushmore. And you're going to do a Mount Rushmore, I should say.
Okay.
Of UF D-Linemen, the greatest Gators D-Linemen, Mount Rushmore. You get to pick only 4.
And you are allowed to vote for yourself because, you are a Hall of Famer after all. That is okay.
Oh, my gosh. So number 1 is easy, Jack Youngblood.
That's right. Yeah. NFL Hall of Famer.
Yes, NFL Hall of Famer, great player. I don't understand why it took 15 years for Jack to get in the Hall of Fame because he was the real deal and a real inspiration to me too. So number 1's easy, Jack Youngblood.
Great start.
Number 2, I was a big Kevin Carter fan when Kevin was here. I thought he was a great two-way end. So I'd have to put him in there. Number 3, I just think from a productivity standpoint, what a guy was able to get out of his body, it's got to be Brad Culpepper.
Oh, great answer. Yeah.
He's up for the College Hall of Fame this year. He's on the ballot, right?
He is.
Yeah. Brad should definitely do it. They call it something different now. He was a great student athlete, won the Grady Trophy, was an All-American, wildly productive as a college player, had a good NFL career too. So yeah, Brad's absolutely deserving of the Hall of Fame in college, and I think he belongs on the Mount Rushmore. His head, because it's so big, would probably squeeze out the other person. And so I'm going to say for my Mount Rushmore, there's only going to be 3 because Brad's head's going to take up twice as much room.
We'll take it. We'll take it. Oh, man. Trace Armstrong, an honor and a pleasure, sir, to be able to talk to you today. And thank you so
Enjoyed
much
it, guys.
for taking
Thanks.
the time, man.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
From seeing you, at UF to cheering you on, the Dolphins, man, it's just an absolute honor. It checks 2 boxes for me because I'm a Gator and a Dolphin fan. So just thank you for taking the time and letting us talk to you today.
Oh no, guys, I appreciate it. You took me back to a lot of places I don't think about. I don't think about that often. So I really enjoyed it. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
That was great. He heard us on the hot mic that we enjoyed the show legit.
Yeah, that's great. He hung around a little bit.
I know we say this at every show, like that was a great show, that was so much fun, but I mean, and he was a Gator for 1 year, but I was just totally geeking out, and I can only imagine how you feel, Dolphin Boy, but I was just loving talking 90s football with him. Like that dude played with or played against everybody that mattered in that era. That is just awesome, and he's in that exclusive, not quite Bruce Smith exclusive 100 club. That's just so cool.
Yeah, I don't understand why he doesn't get more recognition, than just the UF Hall of Fame. What about College Football Hall of Fame? Or has he ever been on the ballot for the NFL Hall of Fame? I mean, 106 sacks, 5 years of double-digit sacks. And the other ones aren't so bad. 6.5, 7.5, 4.5, 5.5. I mean, consistent play, and all with 21 injuries. This is my 2 bits. We're starting 2 bits.
2 bits, fire away.
Trace Armstrong, 106 sacks, 622 tackles, 21 surgeries. What if he wasn't that banged up? What would he have done?
He even said that first injury didn't really heal until his 6th season, and that is about when he was pretty much regularly putting up those double-digit sacks. Imagine if he didn't get hurt or got healed properly the first go-around, how many more of those double-digit seasons he could have had.
What a career, right? Like you said, from the Rose Bowl to the Super Bowl, and all the Hall of Famers and all pros and Hall of Fame coaches he played for.
Yeah,
just amazing. Just a wealth of stories and just an honor to have a guy like Trace Armstrong, join the show and talk about his Gator legacy,
I love it.
I'm humbled.
My 2-bit is Hall of Fame. I think we said those 3 words more time in this episode than all the preceding episodes combined, and it was apt because our guest is a UF Hall of Famer, and as we've well established, he couldn't put on shoulder pads without be standing next to or going up against another Hall of Famer, whether it was a coach or a teammate. Amazing. Like, he really is. It was almost like Forrest Gump of football. Like anything that happened in football, Trey spent some time there or had some part of it, either on one side of the field or the other. So that like you spoke to, the coaches, look at the Super Bowls. He started with Ditka, then he goes to Shula, Jimmy Johnson, Gruden. The 4 NFL coaches he had, I think there might have been another Raiders coach in there who didn't have the same caliber of success, but notwithstanding, there's some serious Super Bowl jewelry coaching this guy, and the caliber person he is. Clearly, as he alluded to, 2 of his teammates when they were inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame called him out by name as being such influential, being a leader in the players' union, and the accomplishments he got for player safety and expanding things. So clearly he represents UF as a Gator. I'm honored that our fellow Gator, Trace Armstrong, is out there doing the great things he's doing. What a great dude. And even though he's a Dolphin, I won't hold that against him. Wow, that was very cool.
Another story I really liked was the one about Earl Edwards.
Yes.
Teaching him at Arizona State around his sophomore, junior year, the technique on pass rushing. And then it started to click. And then guess what? He did that for
the rest of his
15,
career.
20 years. Yeah. So that was just a cool little nugget to learn about, a great football player like Trace Armstrong. So, hey, man, that's why we do the show.
Yeah, this was a good one. Andy, you missed a good one.
All right, Sid, it's been a pleasure once again, my friend.
Yes. Go Gators, John.
Go Gators.